Hi guys, we're going to start a new project. We're going to talk a little bit about variables. So we say File, New, Project, and we're going to browse to wherever you want it. I absolutely do not want it in that folder. So we'll say Documents, we'll say YouTube, and Windows, and Projects. We had Hello World, so we're going to call this one Variables. Okay, so first off, we're still going to use Winform. We're not going to use any console programs. And let's go ahead and just for good measure, we can leave the name form 1. That is okay. But let's double click it so we can get our load. And you didn't have to do that. Like I said, you could have put under here, you could have put, instead of doing that, you could have put this form 1. Oh, this load plus equals, that's for the event. And then we'd say new EV and handler, and then form 1 load. And that would have done the same thing. In fact, if you would come over here and except what I do, I took a if I come over here to the designer, that's pretty much what that did. So we're going to take it out of this. We don't need it twice. But I do kind of like it in the designer. I've had problems with it actually loading sometimes here, so I don't like to do anything there. But I will put other events in the load. So, and another thing I like to do, I like to use regions, but, and let's go ahead and do that. A region just makes a nice little table of contents type thing. And you can, it basically is # region, and then you put a comment. And then to end the region, you put # end region. And then it'll collapse and open, and a lot of times after you've closed a project and opened it back up, everything will be nice and closed, and you can just go hunt for what you need. So I also like a region for variables. And we're going to use some variables. Okay, there's different kinds of variables. We can have strings, and you can make them private or public or internal. The default is private, and so that's what we don't have to do anything. If you say private, you just say int count for like counter equals 0. Or I was criticized on this by someone else. If you say like an int and a question mark, that means that it will take null characters. Now you will notice if we'd just said plain int, it would not accept a null. It better not. So see how we got an error on that? Because that's not allowed with that. Another thing, you can have a string. A string is something like Cindy or whatever your name is. That is a string. Another string could be like your address, or you can make your age a string. It doesn't have to be a number, an integer. There's float. I don't use floats a whole lot, but they come in handy every now and then. Like for instance, size of forms and things like that are float. There's decimal. You don't use decimal a whole lot, but when you're working with databases, their field types are a lot of time are decimal, and you'll have to use it a little bit. There's a double, and you could use it if it's like a real big number, or it could be a number with a fraction or something like a floating point. And you don't have to have the point in it. You could have just had this same point. We use arrays. let's see, let's say we have an array of strings, like an array of names. We'll say an array is with the open and closed square brackets. And then you have the curly brackets, but you don't have to initialize the array. You can do it differently, but for now we're going to go ahead and initialize it to spaces. And so we'll say, or we could say string empty. I typically don't use that. I typically, like to use the little spaces, but string empty is perfectly fine too. Okay, then we come over here in our form, and we can add a text box where we can enter some data. We can add a label where it's just sort of a caption. Okay. And on this label we might say enter names. We can call it label 1, or we can name it something else. And then we can give some instructions here. Enter 3 names. And then we can move it over. And we worked with labels in the Hello World, so there's a lot of things you can do with labels. We can add a button click. Let's have a button. And let's say on the button we want to say OK or click or anything. We're going to say OK button. We'll just say OK for now. And another thing we can add is another label, some kind of error or output message. Let's do that. Label. And we will just call this output label, but you could have called it anything. And some people like LBL something or whatever. I kind of like to give a first name and then label whatever it is. And we can change the font and the color. And let's start the text off at spaces. Okay. And let's change the color to red. Okay. So when we start off our program on a Winform, we actually need to give it instructions. So let's do a right click and view code. We've already got our load, and so let's see. I was thinking about pausing, but we won't yet. We can give the button a click event. Okay, so let's take this button over here. We call it OK button, and let's give it a click event. And there are several ways you can give it a click event. You can double click it here, and it will add the event to the designer, plus it will add a paragraph or a method in here, but I don't like doing that. So we're going to just say OK button. We're going to do it by hand. Click. And then we're going to add the event handler or the method ourselves. So we will say new event handler, and then we give it a method name. And so typically it's like the button name, OK, BUTTON underscore click. But you don't have to do that. And right now it's giving us an error because we have not created that yet. So we're going to come down here and create that method. Alrighty. And then you say private, but you don't have to say private. You could, if you leave it blank, it's just defaults to private, but I like entering private. Void, and we're going to say OK button underscore click. And it's sent like an object and sender, and what that would typically be would be like the OK button. And then event args. Okay, so we have a click event. And so what we're going to do on the click event is we're going to display whatever we enter in that box we've got this box over here. We called it text box 1. Let's rename it to name text box. Okay. So whatever we've entered in there, we're going to do some output. So we're going to say output label text equals name dot text. What do we call that? We call it name text box dot text, because that would be what you would actually enter. And that's on the OK button. But first we're going to check to make sure that it's not blank. So we're going to say we're going to use an if statement, like you have if and else. And so the best way to show you how to do an if statement is to just use it. So we're going to say if output label, name text box dot text is not equal null, and we're going to use the trim command too. And it's a command that works with strings. Dot trim not equal 1 spaces. Then we're going to do this output label text. And I'm putting curly brackets around it, but since it's just one line, you wouldn't have to, but we might add more. And the reason that you do it in this order, first you check for null, because if you try to trim it and a null, it's going to crash on you. So you check for null first, and then you check for the text trimmed. So, and if it's not, if it's one of those, we're going to send out a message with the message box. We're going to say message box. We talked about that a second ago, but so I'll show it to you. It's just an object that Windows has already used. It's part of the system, and you're free to use it. So we're going to say message box show. We're going to say error. Error name box is spaces. And that's just going to give us a message. Okay, so let's see how this works for us. So we're going to click the start button to run. And it's running. Okay, we're going to click OK first, and we should get an error. Yes, name box is spaces. So then we're going to enter Cindy. And it came up Cindy. Okay, in the next lesson we'll do more. We'll probably fill up an array, or we will do something else. But so what have we gone with? We haven't done integers. We will work on integers in the next lesson. Okay, bye.